Daniel. Talk about knowledge products.
Give us just a second here to do the switcheroo, and then we'll get it set. But while we get that done, I always like to start my presentations in about the same way. Because about the worst thing you can do is come to a presentation and the guy talking in front doesn't actually answer your question. All y'all have that at least once? Oh yeah. Not my favorite event. So what I would like you guys to do is to help me figure out what those questions are. In a minute, I'm going to use those whiteboards over there to take a log of what exactly it was you were hoping to get when you heard the title for this evening's session. If it's not already in the presentation, I'll add it, if I can. Enough with that. Whiteboard time. If you got a thing you wanted to have come out of this session, please let me know. Show me a hand. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start picking them. Charlie?
Okay. How does a GitHub project work differently than a business? I'm talking about open source GitHub type stuff.
All right. GitHub project, i.e. open source versus a business. I can talk a little bit about that. Not quite in line, so I might need to show that in at the end, but I'll try and cover it.
Okay.
What else? You've made eye contact, but you don't have a name tag. What's your name?
Gerard.
Gerard, nice to meet you.
I forgot to grab my name tag, Gerard. But sure. Let me understand how I would connect APIs to my project to get whatever information that I wanted to get, like stats or just anything. How do I connect?
All right. That's a little more case specific. We might be able to cover that. Charlie's got another one.
How do you avoid both giving and receiving AI hype?
I may actually be able to help with this one as it came up recently. How to avoid AI hype transmission.
Yeah, and that's two ways. So how do you avoid doing it yourself, and how do you detect things that are real?
Solid. Any other questions related to knowledge products or incremental development?
How do you find help?
Oh,
how do you find good people that help that you could keep their help without paying them? Initially.
That last part might be hard, but you're in the
So
right
the good news is you've already taken step one. Welcome to the side project society.
Right.
Do you mind?
I don't know how to say it, but like, how do you, when you have a product, like, how do you avoid perfectionism?
You avoid perfectionism. That is actually something I was planning to cover, so thank you.
Good question.
Now, avoid.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Sorry, hold on. So his hands first, I'll come for you next.
How do you actually keep scope, like for your project, to actually ship something?
Right? How do we actually get to done?
Yeah.
Solid. Nicholas?
How do you get AI to handle large data sets?
Okay.
How large? Like a whole company's worth of data.
So we're talking in the order of terabytes. All right. That one may also be a little far afield, but catch me after and we can talk.
How do you determine if the project is worth your time? How do you determine if
Worth your time. Oh, that one's a rich one.
How do you determine if the project is worth your time?
Ooh.
That's a big one. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. I saw you again, Drew, and then I'll grab you.
How do you validate your idea?
Ah, excellent. That was one of the other big things. Now validate. And then user.
How do you determine whether it's something you want to do or something that you should pay someone else to do?
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Should
I do or all right, I'll do.
It touches on the validating the ideas, but like, how do you like measure a winner idea versus knowing when to quit? You know,
Yep, how do you cut your losses?
Yeah.
Solid. Good follow-up question. Saw true again, and I'll come back to you,
I
Nicholas.
promise this is the last one.
False promises, no worries. Yeah.
So, not specifically, but how do you handle conflicts of interest if you're working for a company and you want to do something similar?
Okay,
And
that's
then-
definitely a fair one.
And I guess you could show like, actually never mind.
If you want, you can follow me afterwards and we can talk. Conflicts of interest. All right, Nicholas?
Just how do you know how do you know who can handle each task appropriately?
Oh, how do you handle delegation?
Yes, delegation.
All right. Definitely can speak to that. Won't probably fit here. Find me after, I'll give you some of my suggestions. All right, so I'm gonna stop there, because if I keep going, we're gonna be here all night. Try and cover as many of those as I can, but let's start from the beginning, right? Well, the intent that I had for this talk, when Daniel tagged was like, hey, would you come talk about some of the stuff I've been doing? Was I figured I'd pitch the pattern and I quite literally fell into that has allowed me to go from the back of a napkin idea to quite a lot. Now, we're going to start with who I am. We'll cover that, it's nice and easy. But I'd like to start with that because this is what I'm going to try and give you tonight, best as I can. I'm going to have to ad-lib some of it, but best I can, that's what you're going to get to walk away with. I'm going to tell you the one big idea I want to bake into all of this because it answers part of this. And then I'm going to tell you some stories about how I've developed this over time because it was not a master plan. I kid you not, I fell into this while trying to figure it out. And of course, if we have time, I'll let you take a look behind the curtain about what I'm actually doing.
Yeah. Did you mean to say curtail? That's an interesting
Oh look, typos!
typo.
Yeah.
That was an interesting typo.
Someone was asking about how we deal with perfect.
Yeah.
You make a joke out of them, it's part of the problem. So, my name is Daniel Scheufler. I'm a Christian husband and a father of 5 children. So if you guys are happy that I'm here tonight, please say a small thank you to my wife who is managing 5 crazy children.
Wow.
I love her very much. She loves me very much. It's the only way this works. Now, as of course you might guess, I'm an improver. I've been working with improving since 2017, I want to say. It's been a while, about 7, 8 years. And during that time, I have made it a point to try and lead software engineering excellence in every category. Whether this is doing it myself, learning to test from Claudio and the likes of him, or fixing teams whose process is keeping them from actually achieving the goals they really could. In fact, that's my favorite way to fix the problem. As a result, I've gotten into writing. You can find all the crazy stuff I do on LinkedIn by some means or another. But one of the things that doesn't tend to show up a lot here, because I don't like making it about me, right? This is, you guys kind of need to know this so you understand the voices talking to you, and then I'm going to go get into the content. Today I'm in that awkward position where I'm kind of the content. So I want to show you a look behind the curtain about what that hides. But I want you to understand that I'm sharing this with you not as brag, but because when I went to look back at, oh, am I actually the one who should be talking about this? I want to show you what the thing I'm selling you can do. I've been blogging since 2016. Not originally trying to be a writer, but as a result of blogging pretty regularly, roughly every 2 weeks, I've got up to about 264 blog posts, and that doesn't count the 2 that I've got queued up, nor the 2 that I wrote this afternoon. Yeah, I've been at this. This is what you can achieve with the thing I'm trying to do. Now, I've mostly pivoted to a newsletter, because like, yeah, blog works, but once AI started reading everyone's blog and summarizing things, I got no through traffic. So I'm gonna try and actually talk directly to people. In addition to those, I've written and published 8 as of this week on Tuesday, books. Ebooks. I'm not about to get into the publishing game, that's a good way to lose money. Ebooks from doing all of this. And I've got one more that's about halfway through that I'd like to squeak out before the end of the year. We'll see if that works. I am an active public speaker, as you can probably tell. I've got at least 23 of those talks available on YouTube via various means, including Hey Zoo in the back, thank you, sir. because I just do this. Partly because I think it's fun, and partly because it's part of the method. In addition to that, radio voice. So somebody, a couple years ago, asked me, he's like, hey, do you have a podcast? I'm like, no, I don't, not yet. And I've now released 3 seasons, one of which turned into a book, hint, hint, wink, wink, and I'm working on the idea for the next one. It's probably not going to release until 2026. And on top of that, I'm holding down a full-time job as a consultant with including extra hours like this. And internally, I'm running at least 2 initiatives for improving, one of which hits all of the national offices. Because apparently I didn't have enough going on in my life. And out of all of those things, the only one that actually matters is this one down at the bottom. If I didn't have an extremely stable and very supportive base at home, none of the rest of that would have happened. I didn't set out to start doing this. I figured it out along the way. So when I tell you, you can do it too, I'm not just selling you smelling salts. I did it on accident, partly. And then I started doing it intentionally and it got easier. But make sure you put first things first. Now, at the end of the day, this is all I'm really seeing. There's all that stuff in the background. It's not actually what I'm paying attention to. I mostly forget about it. It's why when you see my intro slide, it's 5 or 6 words about me, and then we're on to the thing I'm actually interested in at the moment. Don't get hooked up on looking at the thing. The more you stare at it, apparently that's going to be fun, the bigger it'll get. Because what I'm going to try and sell you on is not your end project is everything. It's how your story is going to end. You don't get to see the credits when you hit publish, much as I wish. Instead, it's the next chapter. Yay! Oh wait, I thought it was going to be a bigger deal. Yeah, no, it's just another Tuesday. Oh man, I'm going to get both of them now. Never had that before.
Is that the TV or the? I think it's a TV.
It might be the TV. We'll see here. Let me see if we can make the thing remember. Thankfully, the slides are not the big deal. But if this thing comes back on.
There's a remote behind the TV. You can just hit OK.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Thank you. Continue watching. All right. Well, we might be having some fun then. So
we wanted to switch slides so that give some content.
And doesn't seem to like it. Anyway, so the one deal, one thing if you walk away with nothing else out of all of this is that little and often make a whole lot. You've heard it before. I'm not here selling you the next newfangled thing. Standard old proverb. Little and often make much. Of course, how we go about doing that has some serious nuance to it. And I'm going to turn this around so I can actually remember the direction it was going. So, I told you I was going to talk about incremental development of knowledge products. Incremental development of a knowledge product implies that there is something behind that. Now, what precisely is a knowledge product? In this particular case, let's use the definition that a knowledge product is the product, some saleable thing, chiefly developed through the use of your knowledge, your intellect, or your skill. So we're not talking about doodads made of wood. We're talking about an article, a book, a design, template, or an app created as the result of your knowledge. Your unique view on this, and then you made it available to others. Usually what we're trying to do with that is influence decision makers or make people's lives easier by the result of it.
Is the TV not working?
Yeah, the TV's just died.
Okay.
Now, if you want to come over here and mess with it while I keep talking, I'm more than happy to let you do that, but otherwise I'm going to get distracted.
That's my job today. I'm the TV guy.
I appreciate the help. So, this knowledge product, the biggest problem we find with these most typically is how exactly do I break that down, right? How do I make small chunks? Where did I put my markers? So, as part of our backup, thankfully, we're going to go back to my favorite medium of giving presentations, which is the whiteboard. So, let's start with the typical example we have, which is a book. Now, quick show of hands, What are books made of?
Paper.
Thank you. Now, on the paper, we have logical large chunks. What are books divided into?
Chapters.
Chapters. All right, let's play the game again. What's in a chapter? What's the large grouping of sentences?
Paragraph.
Paragraphs. Now, step out of the construct for a moment. Why do I use a paragraph? What am I trying to do with that paragraph? Usually as an intro sentence, some meat, and then I try and transition. It's supposed to be conveying an idea, right? So underneath this guy is an idea, along with some interstitial tissue linking idea to idea, hand wave over the magic. Trying to do that all at once, really hard. How many of you enjoyed writing term papers in English? Yeah, me neither. What about a chapter? That's a little bit more than a term paper, but it's not 10. Would you like to do a term paper? No. How many of you write a 4-sentence email regularly? Yeah, me too. So this is easy. This is a pain. That's hard. But you just told me you did this multiple times a day, right? Give me an estimate. If I asked you to write 1 paragraph a day, how long would it take you to get a chapter? Either of you, honestly.
Paragraph a day or a chapter?
Yeah, how long to get to a chapter? Is it going to take you 2 weeks?
No.
A month? For like 30 days? Yeah? So, how long would it take you to write a paragraph every day? Just the 1 paragraph?
Couple minutes.
Couple minutes, so like 5?
Yeah.
5 minutes, 30 days, 150 minutes. How many hours? 2.5? Maybe? 2.5 hours. 5 minutes. How many chapters in the last book you read? 16. All right, that sounds a good number. All right, who's good at the math? 2.5 times 16? 40? 48?
40.
40.
One work week? You can write a book. This is the pattern I'm selling you on. Nothing but fancy math. The real trick is that. That's the trick. And you get the 5 minutes every day. If you want to do that, I need to swap around book cards. All right, let's try the take once more. Thankfully, I've got a framework, so I can literally change this on the fly.
If it's Windows, you probably need to go in the settings, but. oh.
Hey, look, it's working. I just need to figure out where I put my mouse. There we go. I'm running everything on the internet browser. Sorry, guys. There it goes. Alrighty. So, y'all already saw that. This part is where all the consistency comes from. Little and often in the paragraphs. 5 minutes a day, every day. For a month, easily gets you a chapter. Year and a half later, you've done the 40 hours cumulative work to get to a book. Mind you, this doesn't count the editing, but let's assume you did really good with editing the paragraphs as you went. No problems. Do you have all the ideas? Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to pull a book out of my back pocket too. I definitely don't have that many ideas just ready floating, unless I figure out how to publish that paragraph first, to test the idea. Now, let's start with story number 1. This one is where I get this idea of little and often. Now, way back when, little programmer Daniel started blogging. But at the time, I had no idea about thinking to write. In fact, I was a rather bad writer. I tended to write too much, and those blog posts are not necessarily something I show off, except at the, this is what it used to be like. And it's okay to start here. Started on WordPress, nothing big, nothing fancy. Because I was writing to make certain I didn't forget. Literally like what the web blogs used to be, right? It used to be a journal. In my case, it was a semi-professional journal. I was thinking of the next interview I had, because I didn't like the first one where they asked, well, what have you done? I'm like, read the resume. What more did you want? I have a vendetta against resumes. I think they are really, really bad at the job they're supposed to do. Because you have to summarize years of experience in a 5-word bullet point and pray that it gets past the ATS. Fun times. So I started writing blog posts. This was the neat technical challenge I found. Here's how I solved it. Technical manager. Hey, tell me about what you've done. Well, if you'd like, I can pull something off my blog and explain it to you in detail. I made it discoverable so that, in effect, I was selling myself without having to do it all the work myself. Eventually, though, I ran out of the technical topics, or just, thought they weren't as interesting anymore because, I've solved that 12 times now. And I started writing about other things, like team structures, or like, hey, I saw this one person use this tool for a neat thing. You should know about it too. Or my personal favorite, this meeting was really bad. If we had just done this, which everyone knows you should do, it would have worked out great. Keep a hold on that idea, it'll come back later. But I didn't start with the intent of being a business. I didn't start with the expectation I would sell anything of this. I wanted to write and remember, and putting it out there in public meant that people could find it, which was kind of important to do the semi-resume thing. So I started blogging as Living Resume and hoping that it would make my next job find easier. And then it became a habit, right? Oh, this is just a thing I do on Friday afternoons. Write up the neat thing I saw this week. Hit publish, don't even think about it. Didn't do any editing. Like I said, those original posts were really bad. But once you're in the habit, making the extra step to edit isn't too hard. It's nailing that 5 minutes every day problem. Easy. Set 30 minutes aside on a Friday afternoon. Done. Made it small, made it cheap. Because I didn't have to pay anything for the editing. WordPress was free. Might still be free. Cool. I don't know, I've lost track. I've moved off since, but it cost nothing. Except a little bit of time, and it was a hobby. Got to learn a little bit about web design while I tried to make my WordPress look less terrible. And didn't think about it at the time, right? A little bit. Every week. Little drop in the bucket. No grand surprise. Now, this is a good moment. Answer this one. How do you avoid the trap of perfect? I lucked into the first defense. It was never supposed to be perfect. It was my notes. I changed the audience. I was writing to other technologists who would understand the thing I was talking about. I didn't have to worry about dumbing it down or whatever else I had weird hot hooked up in my head. And as I mentioned, I wasn't editing at the time, so I wasn't aware of how bad I was. In fact, that's probably very important. At the beginning, don't be hypercritical. Start with getting something out. The first draft is perfect because all it has to do is exist. You go fix it later. Get it out first. In fact, that's one of the things that you have to learn first when you're learning to write. Do not wear author hat and editor hat at the same time. The two personalities conflict. And unless you like playing the Mad Hatter, which I didn't particularly, you will have a bad time. First step in avoiding perfect. We'll revisit that. How do you keep the scope down? I set myself a timer. When it went off, I was done. Because I needed to get home. Do what works for you. For me, I want to be home on Friday afternoon, so I'm not going to spend the extra time there. But since then, I continued using that half an hour timer to help me make sure I'm not writing too much. I've added additional rules, I've evolved the technique, but it comes down to, I found a pattern that worked to give me guardrails. Now, one thing I haven't answered was whether it was worth my time. I'll be honest, I don't know yet. It's worked out so far, but I've never been paid for my blog. I have people who talk to me about wanting to, but then they wanted to also own the content, and I wasn't exactly wild about that. So, call it net zero for the blog. I gained some value from learning to write it. I've also had to do some work to get it. Yeah, probably even, we'll call it, because I keep doing it and it's gotten cheaper. So much for story one. Story two makes me very glad that Claudio's here today. I'll explain why. When I joined Improving, that's about all I was doing. I was blogging regularly. I was attending these user groups every once in a while. In fact, it was because of one of these user groups that I got involved with Improving. I found Claudio because he was one of the other guys who was blogging, and I would mention it occasionally in our team chat, or Slack, or whatever chat app we were using at the time. And he started reading through this. Remember how I told you I had a vendetta against bad meetings? I wrote a series of posts on that because I was getting really frustrated with the current client. They were really bad at this. And Claudio says, hey, you do realize that most people don't actually know all the things you're talking about. What? How? This is obvious. Points me to this blog post by Derek Savers. And then he gives me the second punch in this 1-2 combo. We've got a conference coming up. Why don't you give a talk on this there? It'll help a bunch of people. He probably had me sold on help a bunch of people, but I was scared spitless about this conference thing. I managed to finish a 45-minute talk in about 25 minutes because I was like a little rodent on speed. I was really excited I was talking about this fast, and the whole talk was like that. I'm like, no, let's slow that right on down. But I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been that guy. So Claudio, once again, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Because I didn't believe it. I did not believe that the ideas I've been working with constantly, every single day for, by this point in time, 3 or 4 years, weren't obvious to everyone. Because I had figured them out, why couldn't everyone else? At the time, in my immaturity, I had some very unkind things to say about the coworkers who hadn't figured these things out. Now in greater maturity, I won't call myself mature yet, I'm still figuring things out, I realize it's a matter of perspective. I see this world quite different than you guys. I'm standing up here and you all are looking at me. There's hundreds of little eyeballs around. Whereas what you're seeing is the fairly grainy picture there. The willingness to take the chance. Is it worth my time? Am I really the guy who should be talking about this? I don't know. Try it anyway. That's what started me down the next step towards developing these ideas, right? Going back to this book analogy, we had started with a bunch of these. As I mentioned, I'm up to 264, roughly paragraph, maybe a couple paragraph length blog posts. Which means I've got 264 odd bits of ideas floating around, some of them better quality than others. When you ask, hey, how do I validate? This is super cheap. Did anyone else share the idea? Or did you get any response at all to the paragraph? It took me 5 minutes. Are you willing to spend 5 minutes to get a test that says that's an interesting idea to 10 other people? I didn't know I was doing this, I just happened to be blogging it. And I've been getting better since. But this is one of the ways to keep scope down. It's a paragraph, limited my time, and it's out. It's also a way for me to test. Is this thing worth continuing? Is this something someone else other than me finds interesting? The next step with that was to take a moment and give one of these. To assemble 3 or 4 of those ideas and then talk about my experience. To talk through the paragraphs and ideally add a few more. For me, it's much easier to ad-lib paragraphs when I'm talking than it is when I'm writing. It takes a lot more effort. But the next step was not to write a chapter, though I could have. The next step was to give a talk. Like I said, a 45-minute talk that was done in 25 minutes. But it allowed me to test something. That talk had amazing responses. 20 people came to the talk, thought it was worth an attempt. They'd never seen me or heard me before. All of them said, that was interesting, why do you do that? And they weren't talking about like being a mouse on speed, they were talking about this stuff I was doing for meetings. And I walked them through. We had conversation. That turned into 2 additional user group talks, all on that same subject, and I kid you not, I've given that same talk 5 or 6 more times, mostly off of the same information. I've been making tweaks as I've learned. But it was a cheap test. Probably need to write a book on it. But how do you keep the scope small? Incremental. I wasn't writing blind. I knew exactly the 3 points I wanted to make. I'd probably quote them to you in my sleep if I really had to. Please don't make me do that right now. But it's just this talk. It's this. Step up from I've written 6 blog posts on it. Okay, so I converted the slides. Yay! No big deal. But it was on the back of the encouragement of one random person to try it. I made assumptions, at least leading up to that talk. Because I believed him. My idea is good enough that it could help someone else because they didn't see it already. Okay. Personally, I wouldn't have believed that on my own, but I'll try it. My perspective, that weird insight I brought to this thing, is the reason why I saw it in that account. Okay. Still sounds a little frou-frou, but all right. It's proven out. And sometimes that's all it takes, a useful perspective. In fact, what I'm offering you guys tonight is reflections on what I've been doing for the last decade and a bit. Of course, this one is what actually sold me on it. I discovered this quote years later by one Dr. Samuel Johnson. You guys may not be familiar with him, but he was one of the first people to write a dictionary of the English language. You know, that book we all use to remind us what the word actually means? People need to be reminded more often than they need to be taught. So if you think this thing is ordinary, obvious, that's okay. Chances are most people have forgotten and they need to be told again. And that's good. There is value in the reminder. Because yes, you could go and rederive everything. But why? That's what we have teachers for. First step then is getting comfortable getting in front of people and sharing in a condensed form what you've taken months to develop in the blogs, or in a similar aspect. Now, building a foundation. I'm going to give you the example from another talk I've given, this one called Code's Red. Not all the ideas are going to be great. In fact, some of them are going to suck. I had quite a few. I mentioned the older blog posts. But I was dancing around this idea about how to make code more useful. Right? Code is supposed to be for the computers, right? No, code's for the humans that wrote it. The computer's going to compile this away into the machine code and is not going to ever pay attention to your variable names again. But poor old Johnny, who's going to have to maintain this thing 3 months later, he has to know what it meant and why you said that. Code is for humans. And so I had a series of these blog posts built on ideas like, hey, you read code way more frequently than you write it. Do a little bit of extra work so I can read it, please. And like simple things like, hey guys, when I'm talking to you, being clear about what I meant is a kindness. Same thing applies in code. Take a minute to make it clear, make it obvious, not kind of hand wave over thing, or temp, or X. I'm tired of finding X, I did that enough in high school. And so I built these ideas little by little over a series of like 4-ish blog posts and a ton of research here and there and side projects that didn't even make it into blog posts. Until eventually, I got another talk that apparently a lot of people have liked. I've given this talk at least 5 times because it continues to talk to something useful. And all it is an accumulation of communication techniques applied in code. I didn't write the book that has the communication techniques. I applied them to my domain. This is why the perspective is so useful. I read a lot. I read a lot of weird books. Sometimes those weird books give me a new way to look at the problem that all of my peers are looking at and have never heard of that way of looking at it. Because they didn't read that one weird book. Cool, useful. Is it a whole talk useful? No, write a blog post. It takes all of those together to make the cast of a show that's going to shine. but you don't have to have every member of the cast be the star. In fact, that's what we usually get for the drama. We don't want drama, we want a good theater act. That's what you're talking about. So don't expect every single one of them to be perfect. Remember how we're talking about avoid perfect? Assume you're going to give about 80% duds. Is it worth it to find the 20% that aren't? Because you won't know beforehand. You're just going to guess. I'd much rather guess small, so that I can build up to big. So each of the small ones doesn't have to be perfect. It was never assigned to be perfect. But if I'm going to build it to a talk, it's going to be improved. Only the stars are really going to start rising up. The rest are going to play a supporting character. As you do this, little by little, it gets easier. I can crank out one of these talks in a week, less, if I have to. In fact, Daniel, when did you tag me to build this one?
Probably 2 weeks ago.
Probably. I built it half last week and mostly today to fill in this thing. I'm not pulling it out. I knew all the things I was going to say. You saw when the computer cut out, I just ran off of it with what's in my head. Because the talk isn't PowerPoint. PowerPoint's there to make it easier for me to demonstrate it to you. The talk is in here, countless blog posts that I've been writing, and the thoughts I've been given to the system that I used to get there. Yes, there was a system, eventually. Now this is what the system starts looking like. I've got an idea, I'm going to capture it. Just write it down someplace. I'm going to build it a little bit. I'm going to write a paragraph about it. So it goes from a sentence to a paragraph. 3 or 4 minutes worth of work. Maybe a little longer, especially when it's a hard paragraph to write. How do I get your attention? How do I connect this to an idea you likely already have? And did that make any sense? That. Get a dozen of those out there. These 3 were good. These 3 really said what I meant to say. Those become the pillars then for a talk, fill in some slides, and off we go to the races. Now all of this, of course, you're hearing is talking about building to books. Your model will look different. But there's some way for you to go from not having to make a cannon shot every single time. Get a bunch of little musket balls. Small, cheap, easy to verify. And I've lost my mouse again, there it is. So, that brings us to today. Remember I said I had 7 books? Wait, no, I'm sorry, that's 8. That's because on Tuesday I hit the go button, and it's also how I know the credits don't roll once you hit publish. So I'm still here talking. Off it goes. Right? This was the first book I've written. It was about 70 pages. I've written 7 other books, much shorter. But it's the first one I wrote that built so firmly on this foundation, where it started with a bunch of little blog posts or a bunch of conversations with my colleagues for a book they haven't read. Realizing, hey, no, you'll really need to get this, which turned into blog posts, turns into podcast. Hasn't turned into a talk yet. Still waiting to find the right audience for it. And from podcasts, using AI, because I didn't want to transcribe all that myself, to turn it into a book. Now's a good time for us to talk about AI hype and the transmission of said. AI is a great tool, but we make so many mistakes about it. But it's not actually something we've never done before. Did you guys know that when we first started rolling out electricity, Thomas Edison went around electrocuting elephants in public to dissuade people from alternating current?
Yeah.
Forgive me, but what is that if not hype around some technology? Oh God, it's gonna kill everyone! Don't touch it! Well, yeah! Don't touch a live wire, don't do it for DC neither! Yeah. Humans do this, is my point. We do it all the time. I don't know why we keep doing it. Maybe it's because we like to be afraid. I hope not. But at the end of the day, the real way to tell the difference between hype and not, test it. Is this idea any good or is it all just noise? Test it. A little bit. For me, that looked like, okay, well, ChatGPT is this great big old thing, but I know enough to know that it's sniffing my data. How do I run that on my machine without sending it to the internet? Found one. Tried it.
Yeah.
This is kind of neat. What are I going to use it for? Didn't know yet. Came back a few months later. You know, it's supposed to be really good at processing words. Here's this giant block of words. Go make that clean. And you did an alright job. Okay. I spent what, 10 minutes figuring out how to help you do the thing? I can do more of that. Oh look, there's this other AI tool. And it's supposed to take sound and turn it into words. I'd like that. I've got a bunch of podcasts I don't want to transcribe. Let me go rig that up. Spend about $10-ish translating 13, maybe 14, 15-minute long podcasts into 13 or 14 splats of words. And then from those into cleaned up text that I then edited, polished, fixed, because the way you talk is not the way you write, turned into a book. I have already been building the content. It cost me next to no extra hours. Probably like 8 out of the 40 I would have had to do just raw writing. Because I've already invested a bunch of 2.5-hour segments to make a worthwhile podcast or 90 minute. Small tests. How do I kill the hype? I tried it myself. I know where the bugs are. I had many times when the thing would spit out garbage, hot garbage at that. I didn't mind. It's a 5-minute test. I was already paying for the power anyway. How do you keep the scope down? Make each step small. First step was I'm going to write my notes. I'll show you that when we look behind the curtain. Next step was I'm going to turn those notes into an outline for a podcast. Again, another half an hour or so. From that, I'm going to spend an hour, maybe a half an hour, recording the podcast, probably twice, maybe 3 times if I don't like how it sounded the first time. I'm going to spend another half an hour to edit the audio, edit the video, splat. Cool, video's ready to go. I can upload that on YouTube, upload it to Spotify. Ta-da! 3 hours later, a note has become a podcast. Done in 30-minute increments over about a week, maybe 2. Do you have 30 minutes you can find in a day? Now, raise your hands real quick if you think you'd be great at immediately editing a podcast.
Oh.
Yeah, no, I sucked at it the first time too. But I wasn't out there trying to make money making a podcast the first time. I was out trying to figure out how to ride the bicycle, and I scuffed my knee a bunch. I also learned a few things. Because I kept the investment small. It's 15 minutes worth of me trying to make this thing work. Ah, that didn't work, throw that out. And I had no conniption about throwing it out because it wasn't this masterful work that I was never going to be able to recover. Finding the way to make the step easy to undo is important. It's extremely hard in physical mediums, extremely easy in electronic. But find a way to test your idea easily first before you invest a lot of time or money or material that could be lost if you don't have the skill yet. I did not have the skill for podcast editing, so I did not buy myself a fancy new rig to do podcast editing. I ran it on my dirty little laptop. My parents, or my brother actually, bought me a $100 USB condenser mic. To be clear, that's one of the low end, slightly better than what I've got default mics. I was previously doing this off of my gamer mic for my headset that I use for work. I invested practically nothing in this thing at first. By the time I did my first season, my brother said this will be a good gift for you and it's not too expensive. And I knew well enough how to make good use of it. This is the way. Little and often. Much. Podcast, LLM, a lot of editing and refinement, Claudio helping me edit the book again. Book. Now, here's the punchline. It hasn't sold yet. It's available. No one has bought it. Is it a failure? You're allowed to say yes, by the way.
And I got started one.
I now need to answer this question. Is it worth my time? If I'm trying to replace my income with the books, I am so in trouble. But I do have one thing working in my favor. You see, my mother is also an author. So I've got to watch over her shoulder while she figured out how to do this. She does actually make enough income that she gets a considerable chunk from her writing. But she didn't start that way. My mother has 24 books, maybe a few more, out, and we're talking like little novels, right? Fiction. She didn't start making real money until she had about 10 of them out there. 10 of them in a fiction series. Because people were unwilling to bet on a new sole entry in a series because they didn't want to get attached to the characters yet. And I had to watch and learn. I'm at my 8th book. This is the biggest one I had, and it's intentionally an experiment. We'll see if it's a success, because it's a success if anyone buys it. That's however much I'm selling for, more than I had before. Prior, it was just me talking to myself. I was giving away the podcast for free to begin with. Did I lose anything? Only the hours I put in to convert it. And I learned a few interesting skills along the way. And now, what's more fun, is I have a thing that I can tell you is worth so many dollars, and you're struggling with this topic. Thank God, here are my notes. How much is that worth to you? To be able to take your experience for the last decade and hand it packaged to someone to address their specific problem. That's worth more to me. Truth is, though, answering whether this was worth my time and can I validate it, can I measure it, is hard. When I say hard, I don't mean like, oh, it's complicated, all the numbers. No. Measure implies there's a value you're looking for. Did I get value from the process or only from the product? I don't know yet. I'll be honest, I haven't figured that part out. I haven't done the retrospective on it yet. I just launched it this week. But I know for the last 7 books, I had value in both. I'm hoping that the value in the product increases over time. But my plan is that I'm in it for the long haul. I'm not going to stop writing books because this one's a failure. It'd be silly. I've got plans for another season of the podcast, probably 2, which itself could turn into 1 or 2 more books in the topic I happen to enjoy the most, plus that one other book I already mentioned. What I have is a system built to generate these things by stuff I'm doing normally. The trick is that these little and often went from being a thing I did on the side to now being what is effectively an integral part of my life. I didn't intend that. It happened. The things you do regularly are who you become. I chose the habit of writing. That part I can claim I did intentionally. I chose it for a very different reason than what I'm getting out of it now. It evolved. Oops, I guess. But you can do it with more intent. That's what I've done with the talks. I will now intentionally test the ideas that I'm going to put into a talk in the blog post first. Because I don't know if they're right yet. I need to taste them. So I'll test it with the blog post. And then I'll look for how people respond, or I'll ask questions about it. But the blog has now formally become my testing bed, where I'll shoot little musket shots rather than the cannon. Now, you've seen the whole thing, start to finish. The blog posts, collect some ideas, regular and often, all of this fun. I found out recently, like literally yesterday, I was listening to a podcast because I've got a long commute, from Entree Leadership. How many of you are familiar with that? No? Okay. Check Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey.
Oh, Ramsey. Yeah.
Ramsey. So if you aren't familiar with that, I highly recommend it. Give it a listen. It's worth your time, at least a little bit if you're trying to figure out how to lead a small business.
What is it about?
Entree Leadership. So essentially entrepreneur, entree, leadership attack. And he mentioned that apparently Ramsey Solutions, his company, does the same thing. They will run small-scale tests of products they have an idea for. And he gave the following example, that he has one of the personalities, Dr. John Mulaney, who is a psychiatrist. And he was writing about things on like anxiety at work and how to deal with purpose at a company that's supposed to be for profit. Stuff you'd expect to see in the business section. But they don't. Every one of the books they release is like an almost immediate New York Times #1 bestseller. From day one, because they can sell 200 million copies of this thing. But it never starts that way. It'll start as an idea that enters their podcast, and they'll talk about it. And they'll get a bunch of listener responses. Or it'll be a 1-chapter output from Dr. John Mulaney. Hey guys, if you like this, check out this chapter we've just written up. Let us know what you think. Give it out for free. Or sell it for $1. Sells out immediately. Or they'll turn it into a talk for their conference. And they'll test this thing. And by the time it gets to the talk, it's usually Rev 6 of the idea, before it becomes a book, at which point it's like Rev 8. So many little revisions on the same set of ideas or the accumulation of the same. Because they have a method to shoot a lot of little musket balls. By the way, the example they are using is the musket and the cannons. It's where I'm borrowing it from. Tiny musket shots to check if you're hitting the right target. Fire the cannon when you know you're on target. Don't waste the cannon shot until you're close enough. Was my book a cannon shot or a musket shot? Probably more like the cannon, given the amount of extra work it took to go from podcast to tube. But by this point in time, I've shot a bunch of little musket shots from the podcast, from the blog, from talks that I've had with other people that it was worth the shot. Maybe I missed. We'll find out later. Good news with ebooks is that you can sell them infinitely. So much for all of this. Now, would you guys like to take a look behind the curtain of how exactly I'm doing all these things I just told you about?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to ask you to stop recording now. Because at that point, we're going to be looking at things that I don't want to accidentally leak case of. You good? How do I validate? I've had a couple of different answers to that for a couple of different of the products. Does that get you a pattern?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Feel free at any time to tell me no and ask the follow-up question. How do I measure if it is worth more time? This one? Thank you. I need to get back to this one. How did I know that I should write that book? This is, by the way, book 2 on the Better Devs book. Because this one sold like hotcakes. I can frequently say this one sold 20, 30-ish, but it's like a $10 book, so I'm not making a ton of money on it. And they sell it a ton on sale at this site to a bunch of developers. This one sells well too. Because I know this idea is worth it. This one, better presentations, the thing I'm doing right now, recently started selling all right. Probably because I improved the marketing a little bit. So we got another one, right here. 10 more days of better presentations. This one hasn't had a chance to sell too many. I released this one like June, I think? I don't remember, it was like this year. Still working on it. But it won't get a third in the series until both of them are doing well. Or else, like, better presentations start selling faster. But each of these was a small, cheap experiment, small cannon shot, before it got a second one in the same direction. Since this one and this one are selling well, guess what that next book I'm writing is in? More development. Because the area is clearly worthwhile. So, for whoever asks, how is it worth more time? Small experiments give you rapid feedback, and ideally, if you're clever, feedback on an area worth pursuing more. You good? Excellent. All right. I have not covered open source projects or APIs. Sorry. Did I cover AI hype transmission?
Yeah. Yes.
Excellent. How to avoid perfect.
Yes, definitely.
Perfect. Haven't covered large data sets. We'll get back to that. Should I do it or should I find someone? Didn't cover that one. Let me explain a little bit on some of my division. AI was cheap, and I'm in software, so I tried it out. That's handled part of my work. I didn't have to pay a transcriptionist. Could I have gotten a better product if I did? Maybe. It would have been easily 10 times as expensive. And for what I needed, AI was good enough. Emphasis on the good enough. If I had gotten terrible transcription from AI, I probably would have tried paying someone. Depending on how much. If I had to pay them $200 for one 15-minute episode, you can bet your biscuits I would be doing it myself. And it's because I couldn't this is one of the important answers. I have a rule of thumb. I won't spend more on this business than the business generates if I can afford it. Because all of that money is coming right out of my pocket. So am I going to spend $250? Boy, I need to know I'm going to make like $500 off of that. And a 15-minute podcast episode transcribed is not going to do that. So I'm not going to spend the money. But you can probably tell my cover design is fairly formulaic. Mine's this one. Go ahead.
I could add one thing to the, is it worth my time? One term you haven't brought up that you may want to put explicitly is reputation.
Good point. Let me circle back to that one.
Yes.
Okay. So, finishing out the point on the covers. I am not a graphic designer, in case you couldn't tell. I paid someone for that because my mother found that paying someone from the group that I bought this from was worth the money, and they did a sale. So I got that one for like $100. If I sell 100 of those books, I'll have made back my investment.
Yeah.
Does it look better than the rest of mine? Yeah, pretty good. Is it $100 better? We'll find out. But by this point in time, I've made enough money with this business that I could afford to spend $100 of the money trying. Better than not. So, limited investment, limited loss. Thank you. I didn't even notice I went out yet.
Yeah.
So, does that cover the, should I do it or should I find somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all have a follow-up question? I heard there was a maybe there. All right. So, I'm going to cover what you just suggested, which is worth my time, also on the conflict of interest. Reputation is a hard-to-measure something. By the way, Daniel, are we good on time?
We have a few more minutes, so we should move on.
Cool. I'll try and be fast. Most likely, you're going to have to come find me and talk about this after. Conflict of interest. Number one, make certain you talk with your company if they've got some kind of an IP sign-off, right?
Yeah.
I work for a software company. They had one, meaning that any software I write, they can claim IP interest in. In order to write these books, I had to go email my company and say, I want to write a book. Here's my planned topic. What do I need to do to get an IP waiver? All of them have an IP waiver. Now, I lucked out because I was planning to write a bunch like this. I said this and derivative products. Derivative.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to go for 7 of these things. Nobody wants that much paperwork. But I also have clearance for books that don't show up here yet. I'm still working on them.
Topic for Dummies is another example.
Yeah. Right? The Blah for Dummies book?
Yeah.
Find a template. Chug them out. Can we not chug them out? Because then we get into this reputation game, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you guys a question. Am I more credible for a talk like this because I have those?
Yes.
Yeah.
How much more credible?
As compared to what?
As compared to what exactly?
Okay.
And so when we talk about this reputation,
If he doesn't have any.
right,
Right.
so are you going to trust the guy talking about writing books who doesn't have any? Heck no, that'd be silly.
Yeah.
But does it play for me being a consultant?
Right.
Maybe, especially ones like these.
Yeah.
Because now, when I go talk to a college, here's a book you should supplement what you're already doing.
There you go. Yeah.
How much is that worth in reputation? I have no idea. I just started doing this stuff within like the last 3 or 4 years. In fact, remember Claudio? Claudio's the one who said, I was looking at this service, I'm like, hey, that's a great idea, and then I'm off to the races. But you do need to bear in mind, because that quality now, if there is a massive spelling mistake, or like all of a sudden the EPUB version of this corrupts somebody's Kindle, ow,
Yeah.
that's on me,
Well, maybe.
partly.
Yeah.
Like, it's like food poisoning. They always blame the last restaurant they went to. It'll be my fault whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
But, is it worth having your name out there?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm at least making the bet on it. And it is a way of, I made this. I used tools that were available to everyone in this room. I paid for it. But you could too, and you could do this too. What's the difference? 5 minutes a day, every day, until I got to 40 hours. Okay, maybe not quite that long for some of these books, but that last one, yeah. So much for conflict of interest. Make certain you get yourself legally covered, because your business will have a vested interest in some of the IP you create. Now, there were topics I couldn't get into here, like delegation safely. This is a leadership topic, my favorite topic. GitHub, OSS,
Yeah.
talk,
Don't worry about it.
and connect APIs, love to talk. That one, that's a whole other subject. But I want to say thank you guys for your time. Let me switch back to the presentation again, because there are 2 more pieces I'd like to share with you. One of those you should expect to see coming. Can I have some feedback? So you guys can kindly scan that. That'll send you to Talkadot. I didn't actually think the slides were worth sharing, but if you guys tell me I'm wrong, let me know and I'll figure out a way to share you the slides. But specifically, I want to collect the feedback to see that this was a useful session. And someone got me the extra thing. Thank you for whoever did this. I really appreciate it.
You need to log in to do the Talkadot.
You should not need to. It should, oh, you will be asked for like your name or some such. Technically, you should be able to provide it anonymous. If you leave your email, I will be able to eventually get it through there, but don't feel you need to, since there's nothing I can send you through that, because I didn't attach the slides. Y'all tell me if you wanted the slides.
Yes, actually.
Okay then, I'll go and package them up. Oh, I'm sorry, I walked right in front. All right, quick show of hands when you have Talkadot moving in the right direction, because there will be one more QR code to scan here in a minute. Whew. Sorry, Danielle, I'm gonna run over it. Go ahead. I'm starting to see some people have finished. Shake your heads. No. Some yes, some no. All right, well, hold on a few more minutes. So as I mentioned, most of the writing I do nowadays is sent directly to the newsletter, and it's quietly posted on the blog. If you'd like to see some of the things I keep writing or see what those experiments look like, even for only a little bit, you can sign up for the newsletter at that QR code. Let me know if the link doesn't work. Oh, look. What's it complaining about, Jim? What? No, that isn't correct URL. That's very frustrating. Let me see if I can fix that. Was having some trouble with that this morning. It looks like it's come back to bite me.
The QR code didn't work?
Yep.
Yeah, it was working earlier.
Alright, so we may have to go with a backup option. No, it's published, so let me just do something else. Alright, real quick, if you guys go to daniel.scheufler.tech and then click on Count on Novel Failure, that sign up link should bring you to the correct place. If it's not working, that's going to be a whole new kettle of fish, in which case I'm going to have to borrow Danielle's email list here or something. Oh, or you can click on that. By the way, I did mention that sometimes doing this yourself leads to some hiccups. This is one of them. The newsletter is relatively recent, it's still trying to get the thing
You may
together.
want to put that URL in large type on the screen.
That is not a good idea.
Which browser are you using?
This one's Firefox, but he was having trouble with it on his phone, so I think maybe something in the network, or the fact that the thing itself doesn't work. Because if I click here, I'll run into that same problem, but it's because it's trying to force it to an HTTPS connection rather than HTTP.
Why? Oops.
Yeah, browsers, gotta love them. So, ignoring that,
So the sign up today doesn't work either, right?
And I can share your link.
thank you. So Daniel will be doing me the favor of that. The sign up link has worked in the past. That one was working. I started noticing problems today. I may go and fix that after this talk.
Okay.
But anyway, happy to share the slides with anyone can get in contact. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Straightforward that way. With that, must be working. No, I have to go back to the correct browser. That one. Here's the talking subject, right? Number one, little and often make much. Proverb you already know. just broken down with some math. Break it down, keep it simple, fire a musket shot before you fire the cannonball. Find a way to test the piece of your idea. Breaking it down can take some time, but if you can figure out how to break it down to the atomic parts, you'll be much better off. And then of course, you need to find what you want to go for, but don't be surprised if you discover what you can do with it. Falling into it on accident will work out pretty well. With that, thank you. Back to you, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel.
What was the name of the website you use to create your blog post?
Miller Life?
No, so the blog posts, I write those in Markdown on a GitHub page, but you should probably start with WordPress.
No, where you post them. The page where you post your blog post.
So I have 2 pages for that. I've got the newsletter post, and then I've got it goes on a website. It goes on a website, I run all that through GitHub. If you're not super techy, use WordPress, much more straightforward.